It's been a painful few months, hasn't it? It's been the COVID storm that we've all had to suffer through and try and weather. I wonder as well if you as a person of faith have had the experience increasingly regularly of looking around the world, seeing things labelled Christian and thinking, really? And then perhaps even more painfully, even more closer to home, is that these last few months have exposed things in our church circles, in our households, and even in our own hearts that perhaps haven't been all that pretty. I am spiritually poorer than I thought I was. When the going gets tough, the tough turned on Netflix. When it started raining, turns out there were some leaks in our roofs. So I'm wondering, is there anywhere we can go to learn how to build a life that will withstand the storms? Is there some way that we can discern what it is to really walk the walk and follow God rather than just plaster his name on our flag? Is there somewhere where we can bring our leaky roofs, our poverty of spirit? Well, do you know what? There is. Throughout the centuries, the followers of Jesus have always had to weather extremely difficult circumstances. They've always been exasperated, if not outright abused, by those who talk the talk but don't walk the walk. And they've always lived with a sense of brokenness over their own sin and shallowness. And throughout the centuries, again and again, the Spirit of God has sounded the call to return to the words of Jesus. The words of Jesus in general, and the Sermon on the Mount in particular. We see throughout church history, movements have both been birthed and revived by a return to these words of Jesus from the Mount. From the monastics who left everything, went into the desert, out of the ruins of Rome, and thrived in obedience to this teaching, all the way through to the hippies in the 1970s who found faith in the tens of thousands through the Jesus movement, saying to one another, hey man, read the Sermon on the Mount and yell to Jesus until you meet him. Again and again, movements have found life and been restored through a return to this teaching. Because in this, arguably the greatest talk ever given, we find out how to build a life that will withstand the inevitable storms. We find out the ways to actually avoid becoming religious hypocrites and instead build a secret life with God. We're instructed about the mechanics of how to move from worry to faith, and in doing so, learn what it is to be truly blessed. We get a vision of the kingdom from the King himself. So I want to encourage you to take a very simple first step. Towards the end of the talk, Jesus talks about those who hear these words of mine, the Matthew 5-7 words, the Sermon on the Mount words, those who hear these words of mine. And so the first step, as so often in matters of faith, is to listen. Would you listen? Would you give a hearing afresh to the Sermon on the Mount? You can find it on all the platforms where you listen to stuff. Just search Matthew 5-7 or Sermon on the Mount. We'll put some links below. But find it where you can and then stop, open your ears and listen, because it all starts with hearing these words of Jesus.